The Everlasting Wonka, Chapter 6, The Aftermath. Charlie stepped back into the factory, slammed the door, and fell face first against it, with his head buried in his arms. Suddenly he felt a warm hand touch his shoulder. "Son," his dad whispered, and that was all his dad needed to say. Charlie turned into his father's arms and cried like a baby. Later, during a nice family dinner, Charlie reflected on how Mr. Wonka had closed the factory because of the spies and how he started it back up again with no outside workers. He also recalled when Wonka opened it for the 5 children and how, after Charlie and his family moved in, no one from the outside was allowed entry. Charlie's mother searched for the right words that may help the situation. She uttered, "Son, out of all of us here, the Oompa Loompas included, we may not be able to deal with the public in the future, other than selling and shipping the chocolate out to the stores." Charlie made no response, just hung his head, looking down. His dad tried to comfort him. "Charlie, you know most factories that do mass production do not allow the public to come in for open house or tours through the factory." Looking up, Charlie said, "But Dad, this is not like most factories. This is Wonka's—" He couldn't finish. The rest of the dinner time was finished in silence. For the next several months, they all retreated back into the factory. Even though the interior climate was warm, the atmosphere remained cold and dark. Outside was gloomy too, keeping all natural sunlight from coming in. Fear of spies gripped Charlie. No one would help him preserve the outdoor garden because of the public's lack of respect. He felt so alone. Years passed, and Charlie's parents became bedridden, just as his grandparents were. Charlie had lost his grandparents and Mr. Wonka. Now he had to accept the fact that his parents were not going to live here with him forever. Heavy-hearted, he recalled that even one of Mr. Wonka's Oompa Loompas deceived them and threatened the future heritage of the factory by selling secrets. The future would see Charlie's decision on what to do with that Oompa Loompa. But meanwhile, Charlie knew exactly how Mr. Wonka felt just before he made plans for the 5 Golden Ticket tour. Loneliness was preferred over disrespect to his family and workers. The display of typical selfish human nature and unruly behavior of outsiders could no longer be allowed. Charlie was the owner of a lonely heart. He felt that was much better than being the owner of a broken heart. Charlie came to his parents with an idea of developing robots that would look and react like human beings. They didn't say anything, but he saw in their eyes their true opinion. "I'm trying, Mom and Dad," he said, holding back tears. In a raspy voice, his dad tried to speak clearly. "Charlie, son, we love you. We know you want to have more than just us." "It's more than just that, Dad," Charlie replied. Then his mother spoke up, softly and gently. "Oh, Charlie, we both know. It's okay, son. You don't just want, you need more than us. You need—" Charlie looked away before his mother finished, but then turned back to face her as she beckoned. "Don't go, son. I haven't seen you like this since before you came to the factory for the very first time. Remember what Grandpa Joe said when I asked him not to fill your head with dreams?" They repeated the words of Grandpa Joe together. "Let the boy dream." Then his mother continued, And you wanted that golden ticket, that golden opportunity more than anything, son. Taking a deep breath and releasing it, she went on. Dream again, son. Cheer up, Charlie. Charlie went to their bedside and hugged them both, saying, if we can't go out of this factory because of the way people treat us on the outside, we'll have to bring them in somehow. I just don't know how yet. They both nodded their heads, saying, you will, son, you will. Just like that, just like the great outdoors cannot be duplicated, so also people cannot be systematically duplicated. Nothing is like nature other than nature itself. And metaphorically speaking, the same is true with the character of the human race. In Charlie's eyes, he saw how the majority of the human race had let their own nature crowd out any good, deep-rooted, well-rounded mannerisms, common sense, and valuable, respectful relationships. As Charlie fell asleep that night, his mind continued to work and search for the ultimate answer to this whole dilemma. His concern had nothing to do with financial gain. Growing up, he had become accustomed to living with the bare necessities. He knew that memories and family were more important than money. He remembered that old house they lived in as he dozed in and out of restless sleep. With his toss and turn, his mind wandered, pondered, and stormed. Finally, he could sleep no more. His racing mind went through rough draft after rough draft, crumbling one thought, then on to another. Eventually, just like Mr. Wonka himself, Charlie kept going back to figure out the right recipe so things would be as sweet and tasty as possible. He heard Wonka's voice in his head. Some of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams. With that, Charlie's body gave in. His mind rested, and he dropped into a much-needed deep, deep sleep. When awakened, he swiftly sat up in bed and proclaimed, Amuse! Amuse! On to Chapter 7.